Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Natan, one of the strongest marksmen that can deal magic damage in the game. In this video, I will also talk about how Natan works in full details, which includes his passive, skills, builds, emblems, battle spell, along with some tips and guide on how to use him in a match. So let's get started with the video. Natan has remained as one of the most popular and unique marksmen in the game. What makes him so unique is his basic attacks, which fly like boomerangs, and he can also deal both magic and physical damage. But mastering Natan can be very difficult, especially if you have never used him before. So, in order to master Natan, you must first understand how his passive and skills work. I will first talk about his first and second skill, and after talking about his first and second skill, I will then talk about his passive. So let's start with his first skill. With the help of his first skill, Natan shoots a dense mass of energy in the target direction, dealing 225 magic damage to enemies in its path. This skill is your main source of damage, and since it has a long range, you can use this skill for poking and clearing the minion wave. Now, let's talk about his second skill. With the help of his second skill, Natan launches a gravitational attractor in the target direction, dealing 150 magic damage to enemies in its path and knocking them back. The knockback effect of this skill is really useful, especially during teamfights, as it pushes the enemy back, allowing you to keep some distance between you and the enemies. Make sure to combine this skill with your first skill in order to deal the maximum amount of damage. Now, let's talk about his passive, and after his passive, I will then talk about his ultimate. With the help of his passive, Natan gains a stack of entanglement each time his skills hit an enemy. Each stack of entanglement lasts for 5 seconds and grants 7.5% attack speed and 7.5% movement speed. You can also see the amount of stacks you have below your health bar. And his passive is the reason why Natan doesn't need a lot of attack speed items like other marksmen, as he just needs to hit the enemies with his skills in order to increase his attack speed. And to top it off, he also gains movement speed along with attack speed when hitting the enemies with his skills, so his passive is quite useful, because you don't need to worry about having to buy attack speed items, and instead of worrying about attack speed items, you can focus on damage items. And his passive is also the reason why Natan's basic attacks act like boomerang, allowing you to hit the enemies 2 times in one basic attack. So overall, Natan has one of the best passive for a marksman. Now, let's talk about his ultimate skill. With the help of his ultimate, Natan summons a reverse clone at a target location 6 units away that lasts for 10 seconds. And his clone inherits 35% of his attack attributes, and also copies his moves and attacks in reverse. And if you tap again on his ultimate, you will be teleported to the location of your clone, and your clone will be teleported to your location. Natan's ultimate is pretty similar to Claude's second skill, but the only difference is that Natan's clone does everything in reverse, and he is not locked in a fixed position like Dexter. And this skill is one of the best skills for a marksman without a doubt, as the clone copies even your skills and basic attacks, increasing your overall damage potential. And the clone also copies the passive of Natan, making it extremely useful during teamfights. And since this skill has a short cooldown, you can also use this skill to take down objectives like turrets, turtle, and also the Lord, so make sure to take that to your advantage. And here are a few tips on how to use this skill properly. If you're in the middle of a teamfight, then I'd recommend you to place your ultimate sideways, or also backwards, and that way, you will be able to escape even if the enemies come for you. But if you're having a 1 versus 1 fight with someone, then I'd recommend you to place your ultimate behind the enemy, so that you will be able to catch them even if they try to escape. Now, before we move on, here are some fun facts about Natan. Natan is the 6th hero in the game that can deal both magic and physical damage. Can you name the other heroes that can deal both magic and physical damage? And according to Natan's timeline, It implies that the Abyss are about to win the endless war on the Land of Dawn, and are about to conquer the only standing Erudicio. Which probably means that the Lightborn squad, which was led by Sylvana, lost against Alice and her Abyss team. And also, all of Natan's skills are named after real-life physics concepts. And Natan only benefits 50% of the unique passive from Demon Hunter. And his second skill cannot trigger the lifesteal from Brave Smite, despite being able to stun the enemies. Now, let's talk about his builds and battle spell. For Natan, you can use different kinds of builds, but compared to all the other builds, the magic build is one of the strongest and deadliest build for him. And for that, this is the best build for Natan. Remember, Feathers of Heaven and Starlium Scythe are the core items for Natan. And you only need Feather of Heavens for his attack speed, as Natan gains attack speed whenever he hits an enemy with his skills. So having only Feather of Heavens for attack speed is more than enough. And if you find yourself dying a lot, then you can go for Wind of Nature or Rose Gold instead of Holy Crystal. And for his battle spell, you can go for Inspire if you want to melt the enemies in an instant. But if the enemies pick heroes like Paquito, Amon, and Eudora, then you can go for Aegis. Aegis will give you an extra layer of protection, allowing you to withstand the enemy's attack, giving you a chance to escape or fight back. Now, let's talk about his emblems and talents. For his emblem, in order to deal the maximum amount of damage, go for the Mage Emblem. The Mage Emblem is the most suitable emblem for Natan, and it will also increase your overall damage potential, allowing you to dominate the enemies. And for his first talent, go for Swift. Swift will provide you with 10% extra attack speed. And for his second talent, go for Weapon Master. Weapon Master will increase the magic power you gain from emblems, equipments, talents, and items by 5%. And for his core talent, go for Weakness Finder. Weakness Finder will reduce the enemy's movement speed by 50%, and also reduce their attack speed by 30% every time you hit the enemies with your basic attacks. Now, let's talk about his gameplay and how to use him in a match. Natan is a unique marksman because of the fact that his basic attack will rebound back towards him after being shot, capable of hitting multiple enemies twice. Although his skills seem easy to understand, his overall gameplay is quite difficult. So let's start by talking about his early game. During the early game, unlock your first skill first, and use your first skill to poke the enemy whenever possible. And you should be able to win a 1 versus 1 fight with almost any marksman during the start of the game, especially if you have Inspire as your battle spell. But you must remember to watch out for the enemy's tank or roamer, especially if you're using him in higher ranks, as one stun from the enemy's tank is enough to send you back to base. So in order to avoid an early death, make sure to constantly keep an eye on the minimap. And even if you're stronger than the enemy's marksman, make sure that the enemy's jungler and tank are not around before taking a fight. As you can see here, I was constantly getting ganked by the enemies, and their Ling kept targeting me throughout the match, and I was struggling a lot during the early game. And if you ever find yourself in a position like this, then just stay near your turret and wait for your teammates to rotate to your lane. And your main priority should be farming as much as you can during the early game. So, your early game priority should be farming, reaching level 4, and playing safe, as dying a lot during the early game could decrease your farm by a lot. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. As you can see, despite getting ganked a lot during the early game, I somehow managed to survive. And even though I had a bad start, I was still able to get MVP in this match. So even if you have a bad start during the early game, make sure to remember that marksmen are late-game heroes. So never lose hope early. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. During the mid-game, you should have at least 1 or 2 of your core items, depending on your farm. And this is the stage where you can start dealing damage. So make sure to try helping your teammates by joining the teamfights, and also by helping your jungler secure the turtle. And during a teamfight, always wait for your tank or fighter to engage first. And always try to attack the enemies from a safe distance, as Natan is very squishy, so the enemies will easily be able to pick you off if you're not careful, so make sure to always be patient before entering a fight. And during the mid-game, aside from teamfights, Your duty as the marksman should be clearing the lanes and pushing the turrets whenever possible. Remember, kills don't make you win. So, your mid-game priority should be helping your teammates by joining teamfights and pushing the turrets whenever possible. Now, let's talk about his late game. During the late game, Natan is one of the strongest heroes, and you will be able to instantly melt the enemies without much problem. But make sure to remember, during a teamfight, always wait at least 5 seconds before entering the fight, so that the enemies won't have any stun abilities left to stun you, as being stunned is the main weakness of Natan. And after the enemies finish using their stun abilities, you can directly go into the fight and kill them without any problem. But if the enemies constantly keep targeting you like me, then you will need to be extra careful, because even though you can deal a lot of damage, you are still a squishy marksman at the end of the day. And make sure to always stay with your teammates during the late game, because most of the enemies will camp and try to kill you. So in order to avoid that, always stay with your team, and never go into unchecked bushes. Always wait for your tank or fighter to check the bushes before entering one. And remember, timing and positioning is the key to winning during the late game. So always wait for the right moment before entering a fight. And always be aware of your positioning, as being in the wrong position could send you back to base in an instant. And always try to take the Lord whenever possible, as taking down the Lord could greatly increase your chances of winning the game. So, what do you think about Natan? In my opinion, Natan isn't an easy hero, especially if you're new to the game. Mastering Natan can be as difficult as Claude, but unlike Claude, Natan doesn't have a lot of mobility, making him harder to use. Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments, and consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.